The twin suns of Aeloria were setting, painting the alien sky with streaks of orange and violet. The vast plains shimmered under the fading light, and the tall crystal-like trees glowed faintly as the evening settled in. In the middle of this strange and beautiful land stood a young human named Ethan. He was not a soldier, not a conqueror, and not even an adventurer. He was a simple researcher who had been allowed to live among the Aelorians, the proud warrior people who ruled this world. Ethan had always felt like an outsider. The Aelorians were tall, graceful, and strong, with skin that shone faintly in the sun. Their voices carried power, and their movements were as precise as dancers. Beside them, Ethan often felt plain and ordinary. Yet despite his differences, he had found a friend. Her name was Valeria. She was curious and lively, often questioning old traditions when others treated them as unquestionable truths. While many Aelorians kept their distance from Ethan, Valeria had chosen to spend time with him. She enjoyed his strange way of thinking and the odd stories he told about Earth. Ethan, in turn, enjoyed her laughter, her boldness, and her way of turning even the dullest day into an adventure. On this particular evening, Valeria had dragged Ethan to the Hall of Ancestors. It was a great stone chamber carved into the cliffs, lined with statues and relics of warriors long gone. The air inside was cool and heavy, filled with the scent of old incense. Fires burned in metal bowls, casting flickering shadows across the walls. Ethan looked around in quiet awe. "Every time I come here, I feel like I'm walking in a museum," he whispered. Valeria smirked. "A museum? These are not just pieces of history. These are the soul of my people. Each statue, each weapon, each armor tells the story of those who fought to protect Aeloria." She stopped in front of a tall stand, and Ethan followed her gaze. There it was, an ancient suit of armor gleaming faintly even in the dim light. It looked heavy, built of dark metal that seemed alive, etched with glowing blue patterns. Its design was both elegant and intimidating, like a mixture of art and war. "This," Valeria said with pride, "is the armor of Kael'thar, one of my ancestors. He wore it during the Great Invasion, when he stood alone against an army of thousands." Ethan tilted his head, studying the armor. "Looks heavy. Must have taken someone really strong to carry that." Valeria's eyes sparkled with mischief. "Strong, yes, but also chosen. You see, this armor was said to only respond to those of the bloodline. Any outsider who tried to wear it would find it lifeless, no more than dead metal." Ethan gave a small smile. "So it's like a family heirloom?" "Something far greater," she replied. Then after a pause, her grin widened. "Why don't you try it?" Ethan blinked. "Me?" "Yes, you," Valeria said, clearly amused. "Come on, human. You're always curious. Let's see if the armor reacts to you. Don't worry, it won't. But it would be funny to watch." Ethan hesitated, rubbing the back of his neck. "Are you sure your people won't mind me touching something sacred?" Valeria laughed, her voice echoing through the chamber. "Relax, no one will know. Besides, it's impossible. You'll see." Her laughter was playful, and Ethan, though uncertain, couldn't resist her challenge. With a deep breath, he stepped forward. The armor stood upright as though waiting. He placed his hand gently on the cold metal of the chest plate. The moment his skin touched the surface, the world seemed to hold its breath. A sudden vibration pulsed through the armor. The glowing blue lines flared to life, spreading across the entire suit in a radiant wave. The fires in the chamber flickered as though responding to the surge of energy. Ethan jerked his hand back, startled, but it was too late. The armor had awakened. "Valeria," Ethan whispered, his voice unsteady. "Did I break it?" Valeria's playful grin vanished, replaced by wide-eyed shock. That's not possible." Before either of them could react further, pieces of the armor shifted and moved as if alive. The chest plate opened slightly, the gauntlets unlatched, and the helmet tilted forward. Without Ethan forcing it, the armor seemed to invite him. He stumbled back, shaking his head. "No way, this isn't happening." But Valeria stepped closer, her eyes shining with wonder. "It's choosing you." Ethan laughed nervously. "Choosing me? I'm not even from this planet," yet the armor moved again. Drawn by something unseen, Ethan slowly slid his arm into one of the gauntlets. It wrapped around him perfectly, not heavy at all, but almost weightless. Then he placed his other arm inside, and the rest of the armor locked into place with a deep hum. When the helmet sealed over his head, a sudden rush of energy filled him. His vision sharpened. He could see the smallest details in the chamber, the faintest cracks in the stone, the flicker of each flame. His hearing expanded. He could catch Valeria's heartbeat, the whisper of the wind outside, the distant drip of water deep in the caves. The armor felt alive. It did not weigh him down. It lifted him as though sharing its strength. Valeria took a cautious step back, unable to hide her amazement. "Ethan, do you know what this means? No outsider, no alien, no one but the bloodline has ever awakened this armor. You just did the impossible." Ethan staggered slightly, trying to adjust. "It doesn't make sense. I don't even know how it works." "You don't have to," she said softly. "It works because it wants to, and it wants you." Silence filled the chamber for a long moment. Ethan looked down at his armored hands, glowing faintly with power he didn't understand. He had come to Aloria as a simple man, a researcher with no weapons, no skills, and no claim to greatness. But now the ancient armor of legends had chosen him. He turned toward Valeria, his voice trembling. "I didn't mean for this to happen." Valeria's expression softened. A smile returned to her lips, though this time it was not playful. It was thoughtful, almost proud. "Sometimes the universe plays jokes even the ancestors cannot predict. And so, what began as a harmless dare, a joke between a human and an alien girl, had awakened something far greater, something that would change both their lives forever." By the next morning, every corner of Valeria's clan whispered about the human who had awakened the sacred armor. The Hall of Ancestors was no longer silent. Warriors, elders, and even curious children gathered outside, speaking in hushed but excited tones. For them, this was not just strange, it was unthinkable. Ethan sat on a stone bench inside the chamber, the armor resting nearby. Though it had powered down after he removed it, faint blue lines still pulsed along the surface as if it remembered him. His hands trembled slightly as he looked at it. He had touched many alien tools during his research, but nothing like this. Valeria stood near the doorway, arms crossed, her sharp eyes scanning the growing crowd. "They're all waiting," she said softly. "They want answers." Ethan rubbed his forehead. "I don't have answers. I don't even know why it worked. I just touched it and boom, it came alive." Her lips curved into a half smile. "That's exactly the problem. It shouldn't have worked. Ever." The heavy footsteps of armored guards interrupted their talk. Two tall warriors entered, their armor shining silver under the torches. Between them walked Elder Calith, one of the oldest and most respected leaders of the clan. His long cloak trailed on the ground and his eyes, sharp despite his age, fixed on Ethan. "So it is true," Calith said in a low voice. "A human has awakened the armor of Kael'thar." Ethan stood quickly, unsure of how to act. "I didn't mean to disrespect your traditions, Elder. Valeria dared me. And..." Valeria coughed loudly. "It was only a joke, Elder. I thought nothing would happen." Calith studied Ethan for a long moment, then turned his gaze to the armor. "The armor does not awaken by chance. It has its own will. For centuries, it has rejected outsiders. But now, it has chosen you." The guards shifted uneasily, clearly uncomfortable with the idea. One of them whispered, not quietly enough, "Blasphemy. It should not be possible." Calith raised a hand for silence. "Take the armor to the council hall. We will decide what must be done." His eyes returned to Ethan. "And you, human, you will come as well." The council hall was vast and round, its ceiling high enough to let beams of sunlight fall like golden spears. 13 elders sat in carved stone chairs forming a circle. In the center stood the armor, resting on a stand, glowing faintly as though it waited. Ethan and Valeria stood before the circle, small under the weight of so many eyes. The first elder to speak was stern and cold. "This is unacceptable. The armor belongs to our people, our bloodline. For a human to wear it is an insult." Another elder, calmer, shook her head. "Yet we cannot deny what happened. We have all seen the armor's glow. We have all felt its energy. The ancestors themselves have allowed it." The hall filled with voices, some angry, some curious, some afraid. Ethan listened, his stomach tight. He wanted to defend himself, but what could he say? That he hadn't asked for this, that it was all a mistake. Finally, Elder Calith struck his staff against the floor. The voices stilled. "Enough. The truth is simple. The armor has awakened and it has chosen. We must test the human, to know if this choice carries meaning or is only an accident. A murmur rose again. Ethan turned to Valeria and whispered, "Test me." "What kind of test?" Valeria frowned. "Probably combat. That's the only way my people respect strength." Ethan groaned. "I'm not a fighter. I can't even swing a sword properly." Her eyes softened, and for once she looked worried instead of playful. "Then you'd better learn fast." By the next day, the testing grounds were filled. Hundreds of Aelorians gathered to watch. The arena was a wide circle of sand, surrounded by stone seats. Warriors in training cheered loudly, eager to see the strange event. Ethan stood in the middle, the ancient armor once again wrapped around him. It fit perfectly, its blue glow pulsing with each breath he took. Even though he had no idea how to use it, he felt strangely connected, as if the armor itself whispered guidance. Across from him stood Drexar, a young warrior known for his pride and skill. He was tall, his body strong like a statue carved from stone. Drexar smirked, clearly eager to embarrass the human before the entire clan. "You wear the armor of my ancestors," Drexar shouted, raising his spear. "But today, I will prove you are unworthy." The crowd roared in approval. Ethan swallowed hard. His heart raced and sweat ran down his back beneath the armor. He wasn't trained. He wasn't brave. He was just a man far from home, thrown into a world of warriors. Valeria stood at the edge of the arena, cupping her hands around her mouth. "Don't think like them. You're not here to be stronger. You're here to be smarter." Her words struck something inside Ethan. He looked at Drexar's stance, heavy, powerful, but predictable. The warrior was ready to overpower, not outthink. The match began with a loud gong. Drexar lunged forward, his spear aiming straight for Ethan's chest. The human panicked at first, raising his arm clumsily, but the armor reacted, moving faster than his fear. The spear glanced off harmlessly, sparks flying. Gasps filled the arena. Ethan stumbled back, mind racing. He remembered Valeria's words, smarter, not stronger. He grabbed a handful of sand from the ground and threw it into Drexar's face. The warrior blinked in surprise, his attack faltering. The crowd erupted, half in shock, half in laughter. Taking the chance, Ethan rolled to the side, awkward but quick, and used the armor's strength to push Drexar off balance. The tall warrior crashed into the sand with a heavy thud. For a moment, silence filled the arena. Then the crowd roared even louder. Some cheered for Drexar to rise, others shouted Ethan's name, amused by his unorthodox tactic. Drexar stood, his face red with anger. He attacked again, swinging wildly. Ethan dodged, ducked, and used every trick he could think of, kicking up dust, moving unexpectedly, forcing Drexar to tire himself out. Finally, when Drexar lunged for one last strike, Ethan sidestepped and let the warrior fall flat into the sand again. The gong sounded. The match was over. Ethan stood panting, his chest heaving under the armor. He hadn't defeated Drexar with strength or skill. He had defeated him with creativity, with human unpredictability. Valeria's laughter rang across the arena. "I told you, humans don't fight like you. That's why he won." The elders exchanged glances, murmuring among themselves. Elder Calith finally rose and raised his hand for silence. "Today we have seen the truth," he said, his voice carrying across the arena. "The human does not wield the armor like we do. He does not fight like we do. Yet he triumphed. Perhaps that is the reason the armor chose him. Not for strength of body, but for strength of spirit." The crowd was restless, some cheering, some grumbling. But none could deny what they had seen. Ethan looked toward Valeria. She gave him a thumbs up, her grin wide and full of pride. He managed a tired smile in return. That night, as the crowds dispersed, Ethan sat once more beside the armor. It glowed faintly, almost comfortingly. Valeria joined him, sitting cross-legged on the ground. "You surprised them all," she said. "Even me." "I didn't win because of me," Ethan admitted. "The armor, it helped. It almost felt alive." Valeria tilted her head. "Or maybe it only showed what was already inside you, My people fight with muscle and tradition, but you fight with ideas." Ethan was silent for a moment, staring at his hands. Then he said softly, "Do you think they'll ever accept me?" Valeria smiled, leaning back on her hands. "Maybe, maybe not. But one thing is certain. Aloria will never forget the day a human made their sacred armor come alive." And somewhere deep inside the armor, a faint hum echoed, as if agreeing. Though he had won the test against Drexar, not everyone was convinced. Some Alorians respected him for his quick mind, while others grumbled that his tricks were dishonorable. The elders, however, allowed him to stay and continue wearing the armor, believing there must be a reason the ancient relic had chosen him. Ethan himself felt restless. Each time he put on the armor, it fit as naturally as his own skin. The glowing lines pulsed gently, almost like a heartbeat, and sometimes he thought he could hear faint whispers, not words, but feelings. Strength, courage, warning. It was as if the armor carried a memory, and that memory wanted to guide him. Valeria noticed his unease. One evening she found him standing on the cliffs, gazing at the horizon where the twin suns sank into the glowing plains. "You look like someone carrying the weight of two worlds," she said lightly. He sighed. "Maybe I am. This armor, it feels alive. I'm scared of it, Valeria. What if I can't control it?" She tilted her head, her silver eyes softening. "Maybe it doesn't need controlling. Maybe it needs trusting. The ancestors didn't build things to enslave their warriors, they built them to protect." Ethan managed a small smile. "Easy for you to say. You were born into this. I'm just a guest here." Her grin returned, playful as always. "A guest who just humiliated one of our best warriors in front of half the clan. You're not invisible anymore, Ethan. You're part of our story now." Before he could answer, the evening air was broken by the sound of horns, long, deep, and urgent. Both of them froze. Horns were only blown when danger approached. The village erupted in motion. Warriors rushed to their stations. Children were gathered into shelters, and scouts climbed the high towers carved into the cliffs. Ethan and Valeria ran with the others, their hearts pounding. From the lookout point, the danger was clear. Dark shapes moved on the horizon, dozens of ships cutting across the sky like black arrows. Their engines growled, leaving trails of smoke. Valeria's face hardened. "It's them! Them?" Ethan asked. "The Corliths," she spat. "Old enemies of my people, raiders, conquerors. They tried to steal our relics a century ago. They failed then, but now—" She glanced at the sky, her expression grim. "Now they've returned." The ships descended like hawks upon prey. Fire rained down, striking the plains beyond the village, sending up clouds of dust and flame. The ground shook with each impact. Warriors grabbed their weapons, ready to defend their home. Elder Calith's voice rang out across the gathering. "Defend the clan. Protect the Hall of Ancestors. Do not let the Corliths touch what is ours." Ethan felt his throat go dry. He had seen battles in history books and movies, but never in real life. And now, standing on this alien cliff, he realized he was about to be in the middle of one. Valeria turned to him, her voice steady. "Ethan, the armor." His hands trembled. "Valeria, I can't—" "Yes, you can," she cut him off firmly. "The Corliths are not coming for our food or our land. They're coming for the armor, for you. You have to stand with us." For a moment, fear nearly paralyzed him, but then he remembered the whispers in the armor, the pulse of strength and the way it had responded when he fought Drexar. Slowly, he nodded. Together, they rushed back into the Hall of Ancestors. The armor stood waiting, as though it had known this moment was coming. Ethan stepped forward, and once again the pieces moved on their own, locking around his body with a deep hum. Energy surged through him, steady and strong. When he stepped out into the open, the crowd of warriors fell silent for a brief second. The human, glowing in the armor of legends, looked like a figure pulled from their oldest songs. Then the silence broke into a roar of approval. The Corliths struck hard. Their ships landed just beyond the plains, releasing soldiers covered in jagged armor. Their eyes glowed faint red and their weapons spat fire. They marched like machines, disciplined and merciless. The Aelorians charged to meet them, blades flashing, war cries echoing across the battlefield. The clash was fierce, metal against metal, fire against shield, strength against strength. Ethan ran beside Valeria, the armor guiding his steps. His vision sharpened, showing weak points in enemy lines. His body felt lighter, faster, When a Corlith soldier swung a blade at him, the armor raised his arm before he even thought, blocking the strike with sparks. Then with a shove, Ethan sent the enemy flying several meters back. Valeria fought close to him, her twin blades dancing like silver lightning. "Not bad for a beginner," she shouted, grinning even as she cut down an attacker. Ethan's heart pounded, but he found himself moving with surprising confidence. The armor wasn't just protecting him, it was teaching him. Every movement felt natural, every strike flowed like instinct. But the enemy was relentless. More ships landed, spilling out more soldiers. Fire spread across the plains, and the night sky burned with smoke. The Elorians fought bravely, but they were being pushed back. Ethan saw an elder warrior fall under a hail of fire. His instincts screamed at him to run, but the armor pulled him forward. He leaped into the fray, blocking shots with glowing shields that formed around his arms. With a burst of strength, he slammed into the attackers, scattering them long enough for the elder to be pulled to safety. The crowd of Elorians nearby cheered. The human fights like a true warrior. For a moment, pride swelled in Ethan's chest, but then the ground trembled with a heavier impact. A larger ship had landed, and from it stepped a towering figure, clad in black armor, his presence radiating menace. His eyes burned brighter than the others, and his weapon was a massive spear crackling with energy. Valeria's face went pale. "That's not just any Corlith. That's their warlord." The warlord raised his voice, booming across the battlefield. "I have come for the armor of Kael'thar. Give it to me, or I will burn this land to ashes." The fighting slowed, all eyes turning toward Ethan. The warlord's gaze locked on him. "So the armor has chosen a weak human. How insulting." He pointed his spear. "Face me, or watch them all perish." Ethan's stomach twisted. His mind screamed to refuse, to hide, to run, but around him, he saw the faces of Valeria, of the elders, of the children who had looked at him with hope. He couldn't run. "Not now." Valeria touched his armored arm. "You don't have to win," she said softly. "You just have to show them that we will never bow." Ethan nodded, though his heart thundered like a drum. He stepped forward, the armor glowing brighter with each step until he stood facing the warlord. The battlefield fell silent, the fate of the clan hanging in the air. The warlord lowered his spear. Ethan raised his armored fists. The duel was about to begin. The twin suns had disappeared completely, leaving the battlefield under a sky of dark violet and pale starlight. Fires from the earlier skirmishes still burned across the plains, casting flickering shadows on the faces of both warriors and spectators. Ethan stood tall, the ancient armor clinging to him as if it were part of his own body. Every line on the glowing blue metal seemed alive, reacting to his heartbeat, his thoughts, and his determination. Across from him, the Corlith warlord loomed like a mountain, black armor glinting ominously, the massive spear in his hands crackling with energy. The soldiers of both sides paused. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. "You dare face me, human?" the warlord said, his voice like grinding stone. "You wear armor older than your species. And yet you think you can stand?" Ethan swallowed hard. He was terrified, but the armor pulsed softly as if reassuring him. A quiet voice seemed to whisper in his mind, not with words, but with a feeling of courage. "Move, adapt, protect." Valeria crouched nearby, her twin blades ready but held back. "Don't overthink it," she whispered. "You've already shown them. You can do this." Ethan nodded, taking a deep breath. Then, as the warlord lunged with a strike of his spear, he reacted without thinking. The armor's glowing arms lifted, blocking the spear effortlessly. Sparks flew, illuminating Ethan's face with blue light. The warlord sneered. "Impressive reflexes. But can you adapt?" Ethan didn't answer. He didn't have to. The armor guided him. He sidestepped, ducked, and used the momentum of the warlord's strike to roll forward. When he rose, he was on the warlord's blind side. But brute strength alone could not win this battle. The warlord was stronger, faster, and far more experienced. Ethan realized quickly that the fight would not be won by mimicking alien techniques. He had to think differently. The battlefield became a test of creativity. Ethan began using the environment to his advantage. He kicked up clouds of dust, blinding the warlord temporarily. He leaped across fallen rocks, using the uneven terrain to gain leverage. When the warlord swung, he would dodge in unpredictable directions, making it impossible for the massive spear to find him. The crowd gasped repeatedly. No human or even Elorian had ever moved like this in combat. The warlord roared, frustrated by the human's adaptability. You rely on tricks, the warlord shouted. This armor is meaningless if you do not fight like a warrior. Ethan gritted his teeth. Then maybe your way isn't the only way, he muttered. With the armor amplifying his movements, Ethan used unconventional techniques. He would roll under the warlord's strikes, then spring off a rock to land behind him. He swung debris like weapons, forcing the warlord to adjust constantly. His speed, unpredictability, and intuition, the things the armor alone could not give, became his greatest assets. Valeria fought alongside him when she could, deflecting attacks from smaller Corlith soldiers who tried to intervene. Every time she glanced at Ethan, she felt a mix of pride and awe. I've never seen anyone fight like this, she said under her breath. The warlord's attacks grew more desperate. He slammed his spear into the ground, sending tremors through the battlefield, trying to crush Ethan. But the human adapted, leaping aside, letting the shock waves pass harmlessly beneath him. Each move seemed guided not just by the armor, but by a spark of instinct that no machine or alien could predict. It wasn't long before the warlord realized that raw strength alone would not win. His strikes grew erratic, his attacks less coordinated. Ethan was teaching the armor in a way to fight with him, rather than him learning only from the armor. Then came the pivotal moment. The warlord lifted his spear high, preparing a massive downward strike that could crush both Ethan and any Aelorian nearby. Time slowed in Ethan's mind. His instincts screamed danger, yet the armor pulsed steadily, guiding him. He ducked at the last moment, letting the spear crash into the rocky ground. Sparks and dust erupted. Then, using the momentum, he propelled himself forward, grabbing the warlord's spear shaft. The massive alien struggled, but Ethan's human creativity came into play. Instead of trying to overpower him, Ethan twisted the weapon, tripping the warlord over a jagged stone. The Corlith leader fell, sprawling on the ground, surprised and off balance. The crowd erupted in cheers. Even some of the Corlith soldiers froze, unsure what to do. Ethan didn't attack recklessly. He knew that the armor magnified his abilities, but it would not protect him from every strike. Instead, he kept his distance, forcing the warlord to fight in unfamiliar ways. Step by step, the human and armor combination outmaneuvered the once imposing enemy. Valeria shouted encouragement. See, you're doing it. Don't stop. Finally, in a moment of perfect timing, Ethan used the warlord's own spear energy against him. A quick feint to the left, a roll under the tip, and a push forward sent the warlord sprawling into a shallow crater. His spear clattered across the stones. Silence fell. Then slowly the crowd erupted. Aelorians cheered, soldiers stomped their feet, and the warlord's own troops looked on in disbelief. The Corlith leader scrambled to rise, rage burning in his eyes, but even he had to admit, this human was unlike any opponent he had faced. The armor had revealed not just raw strength, but strategy, intelligence, and adaptability, traits the warlord had underestimated. Ethan stood tall, chest heaving, armor glowing softly. Every pulse of light felt like a heartbeat of approval. The armor had responded not just to strength, but to will, creativity, and courage. In that moment, he understood what Valeria had been trying to tell him all along. Being human was his greatest advantage. The warlord growled. This cannot be. He backed away, realizing that he could not defeat Ethan without retreating. You may have won today, human. But this is not over. With that, the Corlith forces began to withdraw. The remaining soldiers boarded their ships, leaving the Aelorians to their victory. Flames still burned in the distance, but the village, the Hall of Ancestors, and its people had survived. Valeria rushed to Ethan's side, her eyes wide with excitement. You did it. You actually did it. Ethan laughed, though his chest heaved with exhaustion. I couldn't have done it without the armor, or without you cheering me on. The elders approached, their expressions a mix of awe and contemplation. Elder Calith placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder. Today you have proven what we feared we would never see. A human has not only worn the armor, but mastered it in ways our warriors never could. The ancestors have chosen wisely, it seems. Other elders nodded solemnly. Whispers spread through the crowd. The human was no longer just a guest. He had become part of their legend. Ethan felt a strange mix of pride and humility. He was still a human, still far from home and still inexperienced in battle. Yet the armor had shown him that courage, creativity, and heart could triumph even in impossible situations. Valeria, still beside him, gave him a sly grin. Looks like your joke turned into a story no one will ever forget. Ethan shook his head, smiling despite the adrenaline. I guess. Some jokes are better than expected. The twin suns would rise again in hours, but for now, under the dark sky, a human had stood where no outsider ever had. He had faced a warlord, survived, and revealed that strength could come from unexpected places, especially from the human heart. And somewhere deep inside the glowing blue lines of the armor, a quiet hum echoed like approval from generations long gone. Ethan was not just a human wearing armor. He was a bridge between worlds, a living proof that courage, creativity, and willpower could awaken powers even legends had not predicted. The morning after the battle, Eloria was quiet. The twin suns rose slowly over the plains, casting long shadows on the scorched ground. Smoke from fires still drifted across the horizon, and the villagers were already hard at work clearing debris, repairing walls, and tending to the wounded. Ethan walked through the streets, the ancient armor still resting nearby in the Hall of Ancestors, though the armor no longer glowed with the same intensity as during the battle. Faint blue lines pulsed gently along its surface, as if breathing with the heartbeat of the world. Children ran past him, laughing despite the lingering tension, and older warriors offered nods of respect. The human who had faced a warlord and survived had become more than a visitor. He had become a symbol of courage. Valeria walked beside him, her twin blades sheathed on her back. You know, she said, her tone light, some of the elders still can't stop talking about you. I think they're secretly impressed. Ethan smiled faintly. Impressed? Or worried that I might break something else? Valeria laughed. Maybe a little of both. But mostly impressed. You proved that strength isn't only muscle. It's strategy, heart, and, well, human stubbornness. Ethan shook his head. I still don't understand why the armor chose me. I'm not even from this world. Valeria paused, looking at him seriously. Maybe that's exactly why. You didn't follow their rules. You didn't fight like the rest of us. You fought like a human, with creativity, courage, and will. That's why it worked. That's why it responded to you. He nodded slowly, thinking of the battle, of the warlord, of every moment when he had relied not just on the armor, but on his own instincts. Perhaps she was right. Perhaps humans had a type of strength the Elorians had never understood. The elders called a meeting later that day in the council hall. Ethan entered, nervous despite his previous victories. All 13 elders were present, including Elder Calith, who gave him a nod of acknowledgement. Ethan, Calith began, today you have done what many thought impossible. You have protected our people, defended our sacred armor, and survived a challenge that would have crushed the bravest of our warriors. You have proven that strength comes in many forms. Other elders murmured in agreement. One of them stepped forward, his voice respectful. We feared the armor could never choose an outsider, let alone a human. Yet it has. And in doing so, it has reminded us of a truth we often forget. Courage and wisdom are not bound by blood. The hall fell silent as the elders exchanged glances. Then Elder Calith raised his staff. Henceforth, Ethan of Earth shall be recognized as a protector of our clan. Not because of lineage, but because of spirit. The ancestors have spoken through the armor, and through you we see that humans can rise to greatness. Ethan felt a warmth in his chest, a mixture of pride and humility. He had never sought recognition, nor did he wish for it. But this acknowledgement felt different. It was not about power or conquest, but about trust, courage, and heart. Valeria leaned closer and whispered, See? I told you humans are full of surprises. Ethan chuckled softly, apparently more than even the armor expected. Outside the council hall, the villagers gathered. Ethan and Valeria stood on a raised platform, the remaining warriors forming a guard of honor. Children cheered, clapping their hands, while the older warriors nodded in approval. Even Drexar, the young warrior Ethan had first defeated, came forward, bowing his head in respect. You've changed our view, Drexar admitted, his voice low. We thought humans were weak, unfit to touch our traditions. But you've shown us that strength is more than muscle. It is courage, strategy, and heart. Ethan smiled, placing a hand over his chest. I just did what I thought was right. The armor helped, but only because I trusted it. And trusted myself. Valeria stepped forward. Today is more than a victory over enemies. It is proof that we can all learn from each other. Humans, Elorians, outsiders. We all have strengths that the other might never imagine. The villagers cheered again. Ethan's heart swelled. He had come to Aloria as a guest, a stranger in a world of warriors. Yet now he was more than a visitor. He was part of their story, part of their legacy. Days passed and the Corlith threat receded, retreating beyond the plains. The village rebuilt, stronger than before, inspired by the courage of those who had defended it. But it was clear that something had changed, not just in the village, but in how the Aelorians viewed humans. The armor remained in the Hall of Ancestors, but it now seemed less distant, more alive. It glowed faintly whenever Ethan approached, acknowledging him. It no longer rejected outsiders, but accepted that a human could share its purpose. Ethan spent hours learning from it, practicing, and understanding its history. Each session revealed new abilities, not just of strength, but perception and adaptation. The armor amplified not only his physical skills, but his creativity, his ability to analyze and respond in ways the Aelorians had never imagined. Valeria often watched him, fascinated. "You're teaching the armor as much as it's teaching you," she observed one afternoon. Ethan laughed. "I think it's more like, we're learning from each other," she smiled. "That's the human way. You adapt, improvise, and survive, and sometimes you even surprise legends." One evening, as the twin moons rose over Aloria, Ethan and Valeria stood on the cliff overlooking the plains. The fires had died, the battlefield now quiet, and the air smelled of grass and smoke mixed together. "Do you miss Earth?" Valeria asked suddenly. Ethan looked up at the stars, thinking. "Sometimes. But I've learned that home is where you can make a difference. And here, I can do that." She nodded, her silver eyes reflecting the moonlight. "You've changed more than you realize. You've shown our people that courage is not bound by species, that humans can fight, lead, and inspire. Even legends of old would be proud." Ethan smiled softly. "I only did what I had to, and I wasn't alone. You believed in me, Valeria." She placed a hand on his shoulder. "Maybe that's what makes humans different. You have heart. You have hope. And sometimes that is enough to awaken powers no one could imagine." The armor, glowing faintly behind them, seemed to pulse in agreement. It had chosen Ethan for a reason, and through him it had shown that greatness was not just a matter of birth or tradition, but of courage, creativity, and spirit. Ethan looked back at the Hall of Ancestors. He had come as a guest, a stranger in a world of warriors. Now he stood as a protector, a hero, a symbol of what humans could achieve. And for the first time he realized that he didn't need to belong by bloodline to make a difference. He belonged by action, by heart, and by choice. Valeria laughed softly. "So, human, what now? Ready to train more? Or shall we leave some of the next adventure to your imagination?" Ethan grinned. "I think I'm ready for anything." And as the twin moons cast their silver light over the peaceful plains, a human who had once been just a guest stood among legends, proving that courage, will, and heart could awaken powers even the oldest armor had never imagined. For Aloria, for its people, and for himself, Ethan had become proof that sometimes the smallest spark, the human spark, could light the greatest fire. The armor pulsed one last time that night, as if acknowledging the truth. Greatness is not defined by blood, strength, or tradition. It is defined by heart. And in that glow, Ethan knew that this was only the beginning.